Thank you for joining us to talk about emergency response in drinking water. I'm Jennifer Ollig, DEQ's Public Water Supply Emergency Response Coordinator, and I'm excited to talk about Oklahoma's drinking water emergency response process. A lot of different issues can cause a drinking water emergency, including bacteriological contamination of the water system, which can be due to structural problems in the water system, such as a water line break. Bacteriological contamination can also occur during extreme weather events, which result in a loss of power or stormwater inundation of the water system. Operational issues at a water treatment facility can also cause a drinking water emergency. Things like high turbidity or low chlorine residuals interrupt the water treatment train. Other contamination events can cause drinking water emergencies as well, such as chemical contamination caused by back siphonage of pesticides or usage of chemicals, including disinfectants, that are not approved for use in a water system. You can also get biological contamination, such as a waterborne disease outbreak or a red worm infestation. And you can also have a loss of a water source, and that means that there is no water at all, no fire protection, and no sanitation for flushing toilets, and that is indeed a true public health emergency. When we know that there is a serious violation of water quality standards, DEQ issues a mandatory boil order. These violations might include verified E. coli in the water, very high turbidity at the water treatment plant, a major disruption of a surface water treatment train, or a waterborne disease outbreak, such as typhoid fever or norovirus. Mandatory boil orders are usually issued for violations of state drinking water rules on health-based standards for drinking water. A mandatory boil order requires the water system to issue a notice to the public to boil the water before drinking or to just use bottled water. The notice includes CDC recommendations for boiling the water, health effects language for whatever violation occurred, a description of the situation that required the boil order, and it has a 24-hour public notification requirement. DEQ typically issues around 15 mandatory boil orders in a year. Last year was a big year, and we issued 22 boil orders and had one ongoing order to not use the water at all. Precautionary boil advisories are our biggest and most widely used tool in public water supply emergency response. A water system can voluntarily issue a precautionary boil advisory to their customers whenever the water quality may be compromised, but there is not yet a violation of a state drinking water rule that would require DEQ to issue a mandatory boil order. Precautionary boil advisories say, as a precaution, customers are advised to boil the water before drinking it due to a loss of water pressure or whatever the situation may be. Situations that can impact water quality and may indicate a need for a precautionary boil advisory include things like major flooding, which can result in inundation of the water system with floodwater, low chlorine for water systems that are required to chlorinate, no water pressure due to ice storms, broken water mains, or power outages, and elevated turbidity that doesn't rise to the level of requiring DEQ to issue a mandatory boil order. DEQ can provide technical assistance to help a water system determine whether or not a precautionary boil advisory would be advised. DEQ will partner with our water systems by making recommendations for when to issue precautionary boil advisories. This allows the water system to proactively and quickly work to protect their customers on a voluntary basis to ensure public health. Again, these situations aren't due to a violation of a state drinking water rule, but they are mostly due to unfortunate circumstances that can negatively affect the water quality, such as natural disasters. Oklahoma suffered an unusual amount of flooding across the state in the last couple of years, and so we have seen a lot of precautionary boil advisories issued to protect the public during those adverse weather events. Here you can see a recreational area near a lake in eastern Oklahoma from about a year ago, and the overflowing dam. The entire water system was flooded out, so a precautionary boil advisory was issued to protect the public while the water system was brought back online until the water quality could be verified. We've had tornadoes wipe out entire neighborhoods and entire mobile home communities, taking out homes and damaging water wells and water treatment plants. When water system infrastructure is wiped out by a tornado, the water system will issue a precautionary boil advisory to protect the public while the water system is restored. Ice storms can result in frozen pipes, which can result in line breaks, leading to a loss of water pressure. A water system can also have the power go out due to downed lines in an ice storm. The loss of power to high service pumps can also lead to a loss of water pressure. In severe cases of drought, water wells can run dry at the exact same time customers have a greater need to use water. Whenever a water system suffers a loss of water pressure, the lack of hydrostatic pressure within the pipes can result in bacteria in the soil seeping into the water system. The precautionary boil advisory protects water consumers until water pressure can be restored and the water quality is verified to be safe through testing. Man-made water emergencies do happen. Here you can see two different cross connections on the left. If the water system temporarily lost water pressure in the area, the liquids in the blue barrels will be sucked into the water system through back siphonage. Sometimes this is just dirty and stagnant water. Sometimes it will be a vat of herbicide or fertilizer or some other toxic contaminant that gets introduced to the water system. All water systems should have a cross-connection control program in place to educate the public to avoid creating cross-connections. Additionally, every water system should consider backflow prevention devices at each service connection to avoid contamination of the entire water system when a service connection experiences back siphonage. We have had multiple water systems in the state have to issue do not drink orders due to contamination of the water system with a pesticide due to back siphonage. Another man-made water emergency happened a few years ago in Concord when midge flies decided to use the filter at the water treatment plant as a breeding ground. When the people in Concord would turn on the water tap, they would get tap water, and they would also get midge fly larvae, which are red worms. This situation happened because the windows at the water treatment plant were left open and the lights were left on at night, which attracted the midge flies. As it turns out, filter beds make the perfect breeding ground for midge flies. The moral of the story is to shut the windows and consider turning down the lights. The solution to a man-made water emergency depends on that specific situation. DEQ experts will help your water system determine the best path forward to return the water system to normal operations. Communication is critical during a drinking water emergency. Communicate with DEQ immediately whenever you have an emergency at your water system. We have a 24/7 emergency response hotline number, which is 1-800-522-0206. Other communications need to occur during drinking water emergencies as well. Whenever DEQ issues a mandatory boil order to a water system, that water system must notify its customers as soon as possible, but definitely within 24 hours of the need to boil the water before drinking, and DEQ will work with you to determine the appropriate ways to communicate with your water system during a mandatory boil order. Precautionary boil advisories, which are issued by the water system, have a lot more leeway in how the notification to the public occurs. DEQ can work with the water system on recommendations for communicating effectively with the public during a precautionary boil advisory. Whenever there's a drinking water emergency, DEQ also has a lot of internal communications that occur to make sure that all the stakeholders know what's going on. We also communicate with external partners such as the Oklahoma State Department of Health, the Indian Health Services, EPA, and the Oklahoma Rural Water Association. DEQ will also handle media communications during a drinking water emergency. DEQ will issue press releases and continually work with the media to ensure that accurate information is getting out to the public so the public knows what they need to do to protect themselves during a drinking water emergency. It is critical to have good and transparent communication during drinking water emergencies so that everybody is informed of what is going on. During drinking water emergencies, some of DEQ's biggest partners are the health departments in the state. The Oklahoma State Department of Health is the statewide organization, and they are the umbrella organization for the county health departments in 75 of Oklahoma's 77 counties. The Tulsa Health Department covers Tulsa County and also advises the city of Tulsa, and the Oklahoma City County Health Department covers Oklahoma County and the city of Oklahoma City. DEQ utilizes an emergency response structure that was developed in the 1970s in response to catastrophic wildfires in California, and that's called the Incident Command System, or ICS. ICS is a standardized hierarchical structure that allows for a cooperative response by multiple organizations, both within and outside the government, to organize and coordinate response activities without compromising the decision-making authority of local command. And of course, that's going to be the water system. ICS ensures that the most pressing needs are met first, and that resources are used for the greatest good without duplication or waste. In water emergencies, a water-related disaster response is going to be coordinated through the agency emergency response coordinator, and then drinking water emergencies that are not related to disaster response are coordinated through the public water supply emergency response coordinator. Sometimes an emergency is both disaster response and public water supply emergency response. During a drinking water emergency, DEQ provides technical, communications, and liaison support for water systems with questionable or known poor drinking water quality. Technical assistance can be provided by your local DEQ environmental specialists. These scientists are with the DEQ Environmental Complaints and Local Services Division. You can also receive technical assistance from your public water supply district engineer or the PWS Emergency Response Coordinator. For longer range technical assistance, you may also receive assistance from your PWS District Compliance Coordinator, the PWS Capacity Development Program, or even the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Frontline emergency response is provided by your local DEQ environmental specialist. These scientists are trained in boots on the ground emergency response, and they are a great frontline contact. You can also always call DEQ's 24/7 emergency response hotline whenever you have an environmental emergency, and again, that's 1-800-522-0206. DEQ's State Environmental Lab provides analytical support during emergencies. This can include running samples for bacteriological contaminants, including E. coli and blue-green algae. The State Environmental Lab will also run analyses for chemical contaminants that may have been introduced to the water system, including pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and other chemical contaminants on an as-needed basis. Water systems are a closed system that have been engineered and perfected over the last several centuries. That means that when things go wrong, they are often predictable, and we already have developed a process to handle that type of emergency. We've seen some examples earlier with E. coli contamination, high turbidity, and a loss of water pressure. In these cases, the causes of the emergency and the attendant public health effects are very well understood. The science is clear, and DEQ has a very standardized and optimized response to these emergencies. Sometimes it happens that we have an unusual situation that does not occur every day, and there is not already a clear path forward. In those cases, DEQ will convene a cross-divisional think tank to bring in our most experienced emergency responders and experts such as drinking water engineers, laboratory scientists, and field scientists to determine the best path forward. Always, in emergency response, DEQ's goal is to get the water system back to normal operations as quickly as it is safe to do so. We make decisions that are protective of public health with the least amount of disruption possible to the water system and ultimately to the public. During an emergency, DEQ also leverages its relationships with other organizations to ensure water systems have access to the assistance and resources they need to return as quickly as possible to normal operations. The Oklahoma Rural Water Association provides technical assistance by request. The water system and DEQ can both request technical assistance from ORWA. One of our most important partners are the Oklahoma Health Departments, the Oklahoma State Department of Health, the Tulsa Health Department, and the Oklahoma City County Health Department. They will work with their regulated entities, such as Food and Beverage Service, whenever there is a drinking water emergency. The water and wastewater systems themselves and neighboring systems can partner together through cooperative aid agreements and also by utilizing Sooner Warn. The county and local emergency managers are always available to provide technical support and also resources. And outside labs are able to provide analytical support in addition to DEQ's State Environmental Lab. The State Office of Emergency Management also has resources available to assist water systems during an emergency. These must be requested through your county emergency manager. Please, if you don't already have a relationship with your county emergency manager, go ahead and establish one now, and that way you already know each other when an emergency arises. Ask about the process for requesting assistance from the Office of Emergency Management whenever you have an emergency. Find out how to contact the county emergency manager in an emergency, and also get backup contact information just in case it's needed. The Office of Emergency Management can procure water buffaloes, water hauling, and also generators whenever they're needed during an emergency. After a notice to boil the water is issued to the public during a mandatory boil order, several things have to happen before the water is deemed safe to drink and the water system is returned to normal operations. The first thing to happen is that DEQ will send out an engineer to assess the water system and identify any pathways to contamination in that water system. Then the engineer will develop some corrective actions to be completed by the water system. These corrective actions are designed to eliminate the pathways to contamination identified during the assessment of the water system. Once all corrective actions have been completed, follow-up testing ensures the water is safe to drink before suspending the boil order. After the quality of the water has been verified through testing, the boil order can be suspended. DEQ has developed some communication tools to help water systems inform the public that it is no longer necessary to boil the water before drinking. We also inform the public what they should do to make sure the taps in their homes and businesses are delivering fresh, safe water directly from the water system. DEQ has several goals during the emergency response process, including that we strive to protect the public health through good and transparent information on water quality conditions and effective communication to the public on what actions they should take to protect themselves. We have a lot of this information already prepared, so please utilize DEQ's communication strategy whenever an emergency occurs. Our goal is to return to normal operations as soon as safely possible through good technical assistance to the water systems, testing to ensure safe water quality, and ongoing communication with the water system, the public, and other stakeholders. By having effective response and communication, you will maintain and even build trust between the water system and the public you serve. How do we mitigate drinking water emergencies? Instead of having a reactive emergency response mindset, your water system should develop a proactive emergency preparedness mindset. Don't wait for an emergency to occur to prepare for that emergency. Have a plan already in place to implement when the time comes. This is Oklahoma. The question is not whether an emergency will happen. The question is when will it happen? There are a lot of ways to mitigate drinking water emergencies. Your water system should have a strong asset management plan to budget for and replace aging infrastructure before it breaks down. Redundancy is also important. Your water system should have more than one treatment train, backup generators, extra pumps, and backup chlorination equipment in case the chlorinator goes out. Your water system can sign up for Sooner Warn, which is a mutual aid tool maintained by the Oklahoma Rural Water Association. Sooner Warn facilitates the sharing of resources among water systems during emergencies. It's a statewide tool and is especially useful during disaster response, such as widespread flooding or ice storms. If your water system needs, say, a generator, you can post that on Sooner Warn, asking if anyone has a generator you can borrow. If your water system has an extra pump, You can post that on Sooner Warn, letting other water systems know it's available if they have the need. Sooner Warn is also a place where water systems can offer or request extra operator capacity during an emergency. You don't want to wait until you are in the middle of an emergency before signing up for Sooner Warn. If you are not already signed up, please contact the Oklahoma Rural Water Association to sign up today. Water systems can also establish mutual aid agreements with nearby water systems to help each other out during drinking water emergencies. Your water system should develop an emergency communications plan before an emergency occurs. How will you communicate among your staff during an emergency? How will you quickly notify your customers of a drinking water emergency? How will you deliver a 24-hour notice to your customers if it's ever needed? Related to that, if you don't already have one, please investigate procuring an emergency notification system, such as an emergency calling system or emergency texting system. You can also find tools online, such as One Call Now. As long as you have a good phone number for all of your customers, systems like One Call Now can send a short phone message to all of your customers within just a few minutes. Your water system should develop and maintain a spreadsheet of contact information for all of your customers, including the customer's name, address, landline number, mobile number for text messages, and email. Having this contact information already compiled into a spreadsheet is invaluable during an emergency. An emergency response plan is required for all systems serving more than 3,300 people by the American Water Infrastructure Act, or AWIA. However, every water system can use the AWIA guidelines to establish their own emergency response plan. Your water system should also perform a risk and resilience assessment. This is another AWIA requirement that all water systems should complete to know the risks for each particular water system and have a plan in place to address those vulnerabilities should the need arise. An example would be if you have a chemical plant located near your water source or the water treatment plant. If the chemical plant got flooded or caught on fire and chemicals were released into the water system, how would your water system respond? You should assess that contingency and then develop a response and include it in your emergency response plan. Several different organizations are available to assist your water system with emergency preparedness. The Oklahoma Rural Water Association can provide assistance, and they also maintain Sooner Warn. EPA maintains some online tools for the AWIA risk assessments and emergency response plans. And finally, DEQ's Public Water Supply Capacity Development Program can assist with several aspects of emergency preparedness. As always, contact DEQ with your ideas and questions. We are prepared to help your water system respond to emergencies. We love to help prevent emergencies through mitigation techniques. Truly, we are here to help. Thank you for partnering with DEQ to protect the public health.